my company, for example, is a for-profit company. It's not a nonprofit. It's not, it's triple bottom line. So that means, it's socially impactful, environmentally impactful, and has profitability or prosperity. So it's often said, people, planet, prosperity is kind of the nomenclature that a lot of people use. Um, it it is not. Um, uh, it's expected that we're going to make a profit. That's we're in the business to make a profit, um, but we're also in the business to do good, and it's companies are able to do that. Constantly, it's shown in study after study that the companies that have policies that are, for example, ESG is a term often thrown around. Environmental, social, and governance are a lot of what corporations use as their policies. Those companies outperform other companies that don't have ESG policies. So it's just good business.
Hello, and welcome to the Generate Your Value podcast. I'm your co host, Andy McDowell, founder and owner of Generate Your Value, providing self leadership, and business coaching services for corporate executives and business owners.
And I'm Zach Levy, your other co-host. I run a nationwide financial service business with my wife, Megan.
Together, Zach and I have the intention to bring you tips, concepts, ideas, suggestions, stories, and analogies from A to Z, which will help you to grow your personal brand and leadership skills in such a way that joy, happiness, and success, as you define it for yourself, are achieved.
We hope to use our gifts, talents, and experiences in business and leadership to generate value in your life. And with that being said, let's move to our topic for today.
Hello, and welcome to the Generate Your Value podcast. My name is Andy McDowell, one of your co-hosts. My other co-host, Zach Levy, unfortunately can't join us today in this episode, but that's okay. That doesn't mean content's not going to get created. So I have a wonderful guest for you today, Mr. Will Kralovec from Denver, Colorado. And we're going to be talking about a topic I have a lot of passion behind, and that is mission, purpose, and why for an organization. And why is it that more organizations don't make a concerted effort to follow it, build it, market it, make sure that the world knows about it? Is it that maple tree that everybody in the organization is hanging on to when the times get tough? Just like your mission, purpose, and why in your own life is that very thing. So Will and I are going to get into that conversation. But before we get started, let me read you Will's bio. Will Kralovec has devoted most of his career towards the notion that business can and should be a force for creating social benefits and public good. He is a social entrepreneur, a social impact business expert, a real estate developer, an urban designer, an economic development advisor, a transformational coach, and a corporate consultant. He's also a writer, a best-selling author, and a creative just like me. He's a painter. I'm a photographer. Will is an advocate with those who believe that social impact businesses, some also call them for-benefit companies, are creating a new sector of the economy, the fourth sector. With Will's multidisciplinary background, having worked in all three existing economic sectors, along with his decades of experience in social impact business, he's a national thought leader in this new emerging fourth sector. Educationally, Will holds a Bachelor of Arts in History from the University of Vermont and has earned 3 master's degrees, including an MBA from Cornell University and a Master of Urban and Regional Planning and a Master of Urban Design, both from the University of Colorado. So with that being said, Will, I can't thank you enough for taking your time out of your life to come spend a few minutes with us and talk about what you're doing in the world.
Absolutely. I'm glad to be here.
So we always like to start on the Generate Value podcast talking about stories and specifically the life story of the guest that we brought in the episode. So I just read your bio, but what are some things in between the lines, so to speak, about your life story that you feel like are worth sharing to the
Sure.
world today?
I am what I like to call a social entrepreneur, as you said, and I've been kind of an entrepreneur all my life. I started my first business with my brother and a friend at the age of ripe old age of about 12, uh, making candles and going to craft fairs, and we made we made candles that looked like cocktails. So I don't know,
Oh,
that maybe says something about my upbringing. um,
your version of the lemonade stand, right?
exactly. But my father was a businessman, and my brother was, and I think I was heavily influenced by that. Um, I ended up, said, getting a MBA, and came out of school and was at a time when greed was good. Greed was extolled,
Mm,
and I, like a lot of other freshly minted MBAs, came out looking for a job that emphasized profitability, and ended up gravitating into real estate development, which is always kind of a love of mine. Originally wanted to be an architect, so I've always had a affinity for the built environment, um, and joined actually a startup real estate development company, and then ended up after a couple of years gravitating towards two Wall Street institutional real estate investment companies. And I have to say, you know, our job was really just to squeeze the real estate as an asset for profitability. Never really thought about the people that lived in our apartment complexes
mm.
or housed in our offices. And then mid career, after about a dozen years or so, um, had a epiphany. Unfortunately, it was brought on by I had a brother who was a year older than myself who was killed in a car accident, and it really changed my priorities in life. Went through a couple of years of adjustment, and decided to move from my hometown of Chicago out to Colorado for be closer to nature and the mountains. And I started what kind of became a 17-year journey of self exploration, and um, ended up going back to graduate school, as you said, getting my second and third masters. And since the latter half of my career, I've been involved in what I call socially conscious real estate and social impact business. Um, and That's brought me up to really much the present time. Have a current social impact real estate development company here in Denver that is one of really the few in the country that has social impact and social consciousness baked into its DNA, if you will.
So I sort of gave my viewpoint in the introduction of how I feel it's extremely important for an organization to have a why in life, so to speak. Um, Studies have shown over the long term it makes a much more economic impact for the company to do so because you find a larger audience. You attract what you put out there, and if you put out there your mission and purpose or why of your organization, then you're going to attract those that resonate with that why and that message. What are your feelings on the subject? Do you feel like it's important for an organization to have one and to communicate it? And why do you think more don't do it?
It's absolutely important, and we're heading towards an era where more and more people are looking for that. Um, Repeated studies show that people are now willing to spend a little bit more for a product that comes from a company that has you know, a mission, a social mission, has values. So it's the way of the world. I think a lot of companies, you know, we were talking earlier, and they said, values are something that every company claims to have a set of values. I say they're all sitting on the shelf gathering dust, and values are something that you need to take down from the shelf and use every day as your filter in business. And too few companies are doing that, and I think it's the fault of a leadership, really. If the leader's not walking the walk, the rest of the rank and file is not going to follow, no matter how much talk is put out there and propaganda and marketing is put out there. But if from the leadership on down through the company is not walking the walk, it's not going to be upheld.
So when we think of the word value and we think of an organization, it's easy for the world to think about the value that a particular service or product offers to the marketplace.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's a commodity product or a specialized product. But I don't think a lot of people put a lot of thought as to the other, as I call it, shape, sizes, and colors that value comes in, that an organization can offer to the world or to the marketplace through their mission, purpose, why, or their actual product or service, or projects that they do that aren't the mainstay of their business, but they feel like through their values, they need to engage the world with, whether it be giving to charities or having employees do projects within the community and so forth. So, what do you feel like are some of the forms of value that companies or organizations should be paying attention to if we're going to be a socially impact organization or business? What are some of those shapes, sizes, and colors of value that
Sure.
organizations should be looking at, and why is that important?
It's I like to say there's actually three types of values. There's the value of what you're buying, that you're getting you're getting your bang for the buck. There's a value as far as morals and ethics and that sort of thing,
Mm-hmm.
and then there's value to others, and that's really the latter is really where social impact business comes in. Um, Generally, social impact businesses have, I like to say, about 8 different criteria to qualify as a social impact business. One of them is really that they are typically triple bottom line. So your conventional company is single bottom line. It's all about profitability,
Mm-hmm.
right? And that's the way that business has been for millennium, couple of millennium. There is now a shift taking place, and for the first time, I say it's it's the, just the tip of the iceberg, but it's very significant because for the first time, businesses are being created not for profitability, but for purpose and for a mission and for values and for value to others. And that's where social impact businesses are basically companies that are using business to address a local social or global social environmental need. Um, and So, as far as values are concerned, you've got companies that make uh, XYZ product. They may have good values from a ethics standpoint, um, but they're not necessarily creating value to others in a social impact standpoint. They're still profitability oriented. They're not
Mm-hmm.
looking at sustainability. They're not looking at environmental stewardship, that sort of thing. So those are two big values that are important in the social impact realm.
Yeah, if I were to think about my own career back in the days at Boeing, the efforts that they're now having within the industry, let alone Boeing unto itself, about the creation of biofuels,
Mhm.
uh, would be an example that runs in that arena. You're still selling airplanes, but we're trying to um, target environmental impact that product that we make the airplane has on the world when it's in use. And airlines want that airplane up in the air 24 hours a day because they're not earning money unless that airplane is traveling from a point A to a point B.
Yep.
So when we talk about the social impact, that might be an example of one way that an organization is trying to do something that's related to their product or service, but it doesn't necessarily make Boeing any more money, but to uh, put in money into the industry with other manufacturers to try and figure out ways that biofuel can be used in the engines of today.
Right.
On an airplane, then we as an industry, at least, let alone Boeing, um, are trying to make a bigger impact on the world outside of just transporting people and goods from point A to point B. So for the listening audience, that might be one example of
Hmm.
how social impact is transforming business today in a small or a big way. So, Will, your background is a lot, as you saw from your degrees and so forth, in real estate, and I got to thinking as I was prepping for our time together today. We could look at real estate as four walls and a roof, with electricity and water and so forth running into it, and we know because we're all everybody listening to this is hopefully housed somewhere in the world that we seek that out for our own lives for protection and safety and no sense of fear or worry in our lives that we're going to be protected from weather and elements and crime and other things. But from a social impact standpoint, uh, how does the strategy behind housing in real estate help a community or help an individual person outside of the things that I just listed? In terms of self esteem, self worth, and ability to go out and say, I don't have to worry about these things. And so it's not occupying my thoughts, it's not occupying my mind. It allows me to think about what impact I can make out in the world because I don't have to sit around and worry about these things. Is that things you think about when you're sitting down strategically looking at how a socially impactful real estate company could make a difference out in the world?
It's it's one of the problems is that a lot of people, frankly, don't have what you just described.
Mm-hmm.
They're either, um, you know, uh, in substandard housing, without housing, or the problem we have in Colorado and a lot of other cities and states have around the country increasingly is affordability, housing affordability.
Mm-hmm.
So people can't afford to live near their jobs, and that creates a whole nother set of externalities of pollution from driving and commuting to your jobs, of stress, of health issues, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So real estate has always been, as I say, I spent the first half of my career being very profit oriented in real estate, or being exclusively profit oriented, I should say, um, as looking at real estate as just an asset, no different than a stock or a bond,
Mm-hmm.
uh, and I look at real estate as a tool, And I much prefer actually even the term built environment, because real estate is usually typically a property, a building and the land. The built environment encompasses a whole community, and as an urban planner, is one of my many hats that I wear. Um, it's really about looking at a community, and you ask, for example, how does housing help individuals? And it really, not only does it shelter people, but it creates unity in a community. Um, and home ownership, frankly, creates more of that stability. There's many studies now where showing that children who don't have stable housing growing up and are moving from apartment to apartment suffer the rest of their lives from absenteeism in jobs, from truancy, from crime, all sorts of things. So it helps not only community, but then on a larger scale, it helps society. At the end of the day, we as taxpayers are all the ones that are paying for uh, prisons, are paying for homeless, are paying for emergency room visits, are paying for support services. Um, it's we either pay now or we pay later, and unfortunately, we as society have a aversion to paying now, so we push it off, and the bill coming later is a lot larger than people ever realize. So, real estate, as I say, I like to say that I, as a social impact real estate developer, I use real estate to increase opportunity, community, uh, health and wellness, and social equity. And that's something you don't hear from most real estate developers.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, generally, imagine most real estate developers would talk about how their particular, whether it's a housing community or a business, corporate piece of real estate, a tall tower building, housing businesses or whatever, is going to help business in the area and help businesses be profitable, create an environment in a community, as opposed to looking at the social impact and enlarging that definition of the community.
Which having businesses being profitable is a good thing. I'm not, I'll be the first to say I'm not against profit. I'm not against capitalism,
Mm-hmm.
but there's a lot of value. There's another term for that, another definition for that term. There's a lot of value in real estate that is social value that I think we frankly lose out on as a society when a property is just developed purely for profit and without any other considerations.
So, one of the subjects I like to talk about is the power of two very small words in the English language, and that is the words or and and. And so, when we're talking about a company or a corporation and profitability, we're generally using the word or in that conversation. It's it's either you or me. It's either social impact or our profitability. That there's this fear or this thought process that you can only have one or the other. So to make a socially impact business, you really, uh, as an analogy, trying to eliminate the word or and bring in the word and say, is there a possibility that we can be profitable and make a positive impact socially in the communities that we have engagement with? Whether we're actually exist and our personnel are operating in this community, or if we're selling or offering our product and service in other parts of the world. So, how difficult is it for in your estimation, for companies to make that change? I mean, we're kind of talking about change management. We're kind of talking about a culture change within an organization to change that simple word of or to the simple word of and.
We've been led to believe, I think, in our society that yeah, doing something good necessarily costs more,
Mm-hmm.
which is kind of, if you think about it, is a bad paradigm. The opposite is doing something good, or doing something bad rather, creates more profit, and oftentimes that's the case. I think we need to see a shift in our society where companies that do good and people that do good should actually be well compensated, not less compensated. I've been an advocate that you know people that join nonprofits and they often claim they have to sacrifice their income to join a nonprofit, do something socially beneficial. Uh, should frankly be paid a premium. You know, and if somebody's employed and doing something bad like polluting or bad employment policies, well, then there should be penalties and less compensation for something like that. But I digress a little bit. Um, in answer to your question, it's um, the the current state of affairs is such that um, you can. My company, for example, is a for-profit company. It's not a nonprofit. It's not, it's triple bottom line. So that means, it's socially impactful, environmentally impactful, and has profitability or prosperity. So it's often said, people, planet, prosperity is kind of the nomenclature that a lot of people use. Um, it it is not. Um, uh, it's expected that we're going to make a profit. That's we're in the business to make a profit, um, but we're also in the business to do good, and it's companies are able to do that. Constantly, it's shown in study after study that companies that have policies that are, uh, for example, ESG is a term often thrown around, environmental, social, and governance
Mm-hmm.
are a lot of what corporations use as their policies. Those companies outperform other companies that don't have ESG policies. So it's just good business. It's not, some people kind of look at what I do as idealistic, and I say it's pragmatism. It's not idealism. It's uh, it's it's just the right thing to do, and it's a good business decision. And frankly, as I say, it's socially, it's where society is heading. It's where the millennial and Gen Z population is much more attuned to uh, wanting to be employed by companies that have a social mission. So it's, if companies and leadership in companies don't wake up to this, they're going to be left behind.
Yeah, so one of my favorite influencers and authors is Simon Sinek.
Mm-hmm.
And he wrote a whole book about the difference between playing a finite game and an infinite game. With a finite game, you're just looking at profitability, the short term, and how well are you competing, if you will, against your competition. And you're just taking a slice at a time and measuring yourself out of that slice of time versus the infinite game where the main focus is the ability to keep participating in the game. Now, if you're looking at sustainability and doing as you stated, the idealistic or the right things socially, out in the world, you really are starting to play that infinite game where you're trying to sustain the game, so to speak, for many, 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 many years down the road. Even to not even be industry specific, but just the ability for humankind on this planet to keep playing the game of life, so to speak. And there's an opportunity out there for companies and organizations to ensure or contribute that that game can still be played. And I think the younger generations are starting to recognize that and start um, asking those questions. Uh, Before I do business with you, I like to have an understanding of what your position is on this and how are you helping to sustain the game per se.
Right.
And I think that we see that change coming. Simon's done work to kind of shine that light at a very high level on those type things for people to start paying attention to, and it's great to see. And I think the outcome is better for the company because highlighting it and doing something, actually living out those values, is something that's attractive to most, if not all, people. And if they're starting to pay attention to it, see that you're doing it, then that's saying that's a company I want to do business with.
Yep.
Because I want, not only do I have a need for their product and service, but I want to make sure that the money that I'm giving in exchange and in value for that product or service, part of it is going to be used in a socially impact way that's going to keep this world going for future generations.
Precisely. I mean, any relationship is built on trust, and
Mm-hmm.
companies have to recognize that they're building trust with their clientele, their customers, and anything that helps to further that is to their benefit.
So how has reactions and dialogue changed for you when you went to Denver, Colorado, and started thinking about getting into this game of socially impact business? And you started, obviously, you have to start dialogue
Mhm.
with people in the community
Right.
to help grow this concept in your business and so forth. What was conversation like when you started, and where do you feel like it is today? Is it, did you get a lot of pushback, like you're crazy? What are you doing? You're never going to get anywhere with this when you first started, and now you get a lot more. Well, how can I can contribute? Kind of dialogue today, or how has that journey been for you?
It has been a journey. Um, Got pushback in the beginning. It's definitely matured, and it's far more acceptable today. But even today, I'm still explaining to people what a social impact business is, as opposed to a conventional business. Um, and some people think it's idealism. Again, I think it's the way business and the world is going. So it's gotten a lot easier, I will say. Um, and as I said, as you said in my bio, social impact businesses are. There's a lot of people that believe that social impact businesses and for benefit companies are creating this fourth sector of the economy.
Mm.
So we have the three main sectors: the government or public sector, private sector, and the nonprofit sector. And social impact businesses tend to overlap all three of those, and in a lot of ways are kind of implementers of public policy um, to do good. And so they're creating this fourth sector of the population. Um, it's a term that isn't used readily in the United States. It's more common over in Europe and Great Britain. Um, but this creation of the fourth sector is, I think, significant, again, because it's going to do two things. It's going to push conventional businesses to have to come around and have more of a mission, have more sustainability, have more social conscience. Um, but it also is going to concentrate resources in a way, and particularly if things like government policies, regulation, taxing policies, etc., help this fourth sector to grow. I personally think the fourth sector is where you're going to see the solutions come about for all of our social and environmental global challenges. And you're already starting to see it. Companies that are going out in the ocean and harvesting plastic bottles that are floating in the ocean, things like that. Those all fit kind of within this new fourth sector.
Todd, what really comes to mind for me was an opportunity I had back within Boeing with a project we did right there in your Denver, Colorado, where my company had an opportunity to come in and help facilitate a conversation amongst the sectors of aviation, where things were not getting done because each sector has its own, for lack of a better term, driving force, or their main purpose or effort. It was really about taking the airlines and air traffic control, who had, air traffic control's main focus is the capacity of the system, whereas for an airline, it's about the efficiency of a flight. And the two are loggerheads a lot of times between those two main focuses. And so I would think moving from a three sector to a four sector, it's really about what is the common quote enemy here within the industry, whether it be real estate or some other industry that those three sectors play in or have an impact in or influential in, and saying, let's not be competitive with one another, but let's kind of go outside ourselves and pick this particular area or topic of life as the enemy per se, and how is it that we can work together, either through a hybrid organization or the three of us coming together in our own way to battle this enemy per se and find a solution that's going to help diminish or totally eliminate this issue in life. And so I think, this hybrid model that you're talking about, that fourth sector, is a way to bring the, what would you say, the best attributes of the three sectors
Absolutely.
together into one organization to make a superpower.
It's
I'm grabbing at words here, but a superpower
yeah. Well,
of an organization, right, that brings all the best attributes.
It's I think this fourth sector is creating more collaboration than competition.
Mm.
I mean, we've lived in there a long time, where businesses are virtually taught to compete. If you don't compete, you're going to lose resources. You're going to lose customer base. You're going to lose, funding. And I think we're heading for an era where companies, as well as companies, government, and nonprofits, are going to be doing more collaboration. And this fourth sector is going to be the natural facilitator, if you will, of that. I'm actually writing a book about social impact business, and the original title I was looking at was Collaboration, Not Competition. It was already taken, but part of the premise is, competition it can have some good benefits. It makes companies leaner, it makes new innovation, those sort of things. but it also on the downside wastes a lot of resources competing.
Mm-hmm.
And if companies could collaborate and produce more goods and services for the same amount of resources, we as a society are winning. And if they can do it more smartly, so it's doesn't harm the environment, it's socially beneficial, then everybody wins.
So let's talk about you for a second.
Sure.
How, what have, as you as an individual, what have you gotten out of this effort to grow, promote, socially impact businesses, and how has the journey shaped you as a human being? What have you learned from it? What have you found out about yourself?
I,
What
I'd
can you
say
share?
I'd say to friends that I've probably picked one of the harder ways to earn an income than I ever could have imagined. Uh, you know, as we kind of alluded to earlier, trying to do good in the world often comes at a higher cost than doing
Hmm.
bad.
Yes.
And there's more roadblocks. There's more difficulty. Um, Banks don't understand it. Financing doesn't understand it.
Hmm.
Um, so it's that's been one of the challenges over my career that I've spent time doing this. Um, as I said, we've matured, and now the two current generations after us are more in tune with this, and I think it's you're going to see a major shift in policies. I think you're going to see a major shift in the way companies operate. They're going to have to. Um, and so, for myself, though, it's been a learning journey, but it's also been probably the most fulfilling thing I could have ever done. Um, it's I think it's probably made me a better person. Um, it's taught me a lot of values and whatnot. I like to say that I orchestrate my life around one major premise, and that's to try to be the type of person that I think old people should be. And that's not to say that I'm perfect. By far, none of us are perfect. But I think there's a right way to do things and there's a wrong way to do it, and we intrinsically know when something is the right way to do something. So it's kind of tightened up my own value system. It's made me kind of walk the walk, um, and I think it's made me a better person.
Yeah, so one of my favorite conversations I like to have with my clients is about the path, the journey. So if you're trying to get some area of life or some area of business from point A to point B, naturally most people go to the straight line. What's the straightest, shortest line that we can take to arrive at our destination? The quickest, the fastest, the cheapest, et cetera, et cetera. But they kind of discount the opportunity that you might have to gather value in your life or your organization by maybe taking a slightly longer, more expensive, whatever, take one of those variables path because of the value that you collect or generate or the opportunity that arise by taking that path instead of just doing shortest, fastest, cheapest
Mm-hmm.
kind of route. And are you, as a person or an organization, taking a look at what might be some other paths that you could take, getting from point A to point B, that you actually have a bigger bucket when you arrive at the destination because of the path that you took, the journey you took, that may be a little harder, maybe a little bit more difficult, maybe some more struggles in it. But having done the effort, your bucket is fuller for having done so. And is it worth? Do you get a bigger return on your investment, if you will, for doing it?
It's something I would say that not only is your bucket fuller, but you're being authentic to yourself. If you're, upholding to certain values
Mm-hmm.
and certain criteria. Um, I have a sign in my house here that says, uh, "Doing the right thing is not always the easy thing," and that's exactly what you're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
That I think part of the human experience, the human journey is personal growth, and oftentimes doing the easy thing does not give you the personal growth. Sometimes the harder things, are more rewarding in the end, as you say, but they also give you the personal growth that you wouldn't have otherwise have experienced. I think I was listening to one of your podcasts with Janet Hogan,
Mm-hmm.
and purpose coming from pain. And I think it's absolutely true. I personally call pain in life is the miracle grow of life.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you think about it, most of our in retrospect, the pains that we go through oftentimes are things that catapult us forward further than we would have been had we not suffered those pains.
Yeah, so I'm a big fan of a model I use in my coaching, a be do have model. And for me, if you're focused on that straight short line from point A to point B, then you're focused on the doing.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're focused on your being, which is the harder road, it takes more work, it takes more effort. You're going to have to push against society often to authentically be who you are in this world and what you were created to be. That path is a longer path, um, but this sweetness, if you will, of life that shows up by focusing on your being instead of that extremely short line of doing and running over everybody or whatever it takes to arrive at your destination the quickest, is the better path
Yeah.
in life. And that's what I advise my clients to think about and to do,
It's
to
it's it's
live that
something I think
authentic life.
yeah, it's something I think it's important for leadership in companies to
Mm-hmm.
think about, and to nurture that in their staffs and employees.
So, Will, I can't thank you enough for taking that valuable resource in your life called time that's finite for everybody.
Yep.
And we're not quite sure how long that line is in life, what the universe is going to give us. But I can't thank you for taking some time out of your life to come share your wisdom with our listening audience.
Been
If
my
somebody
pleasure.
wanted to continue to engage with you or learn from you about socially impact businesses and so forth, what's the best way that they could
Uh,
reach out to you?
Absolutely. They can either reach out on my company website, which is jjkplaces with an S, .com, jjkplaces.com, or they can simply send me an email at will.k@jjkplaces.com or info@jjkplaces.com. So happy to answer any requests or questions.
And I would encourage you, the listening audience, to do a little more digging about Will. The JJK in his title of his business has to deal with some distant relatives of his that were immigrants that went on to be um, members of the community and society that are out there trying to make changes and make things better within the community. And it's something that in kind of a way that Will and I share I have an immigrant on my father's side who came in, participated in the Civil War, became a postmaster general, and a member of the House of Representatives, state representatives for the state of Illinois. From that perspective, so I really enjoyed reading that part about your bio and your history. I've like kind of been there, done that.
Yeah.
From that perspective, and the beautiful thing for me and my story is that particular immigrant shares my name. His name was Andrew McDowell as well.
Okay. Interesting.
Anyway, a little side note about Will and myself.
Exactly.
It might resonate with some of you out there that have the same kind of story of immigrants in your family that came in and made a beneficial impact into what the United States is today. So to finish up, Will, as I told you, we ask every guest the same last question because we like to collect the answers and see where that common thread is between all the answers. So the last question we have for you today, Will, is what do the words generate your value mean to you?
Well, in light of what I do, and even in light of what the book I'm writing, we need to, I think we as a society, we as humanity, frankly, need to elevate our from kind of a fear-based mentality to becoming more at decision-making in the world from a place of understanding, compassion, respect, love, joy. And I summarize all that. It's actually will be described in my book. What I call the selfless way is a new kind of mindset that I think humanity needs to evolve to. And I summarize that actually with the tagline, be value, not fear. It's be value to others, not fear-based mentality. So generating value is along those lines, is being value to others and not making decisions based on fear-based mentality.
Yeah, totally agree with you. So that wraps up our episode today. We're here every week with guests of the caliber of Will Kralovec, and we can't encourage you enough. Hit that subscribe button. Join us every week as we try to make an effort to show you the different sizes, shapes, and colors that value comes in, and where do you want to fit? Are you getting out of bed every morning and putting your feet on the floor and asking yourself, where are my opportunities today to generate value, either in my own life or those of others that I'm going to interact or possibly impact if you're a leader in your given day? So with that being said, we're coming up on the holiday season here in the United States. So I hope you're preparing your minds and your heart for that opportunity of gratitude and love that the holiday season brings. Making your plans for safe travel and so forth. But I hope that you'll still make time to come back and listen to the episodes that'll keep running through the holiday time with people that have led a life of self-leadership and are trying to make ways of impact, positive impact in the world that we bring you every week. So with that being said, have a great day, have a great week, have a great holiday season. And we'll see you next time right here on the Generate Your Value podcast. Take care.
Thank you. Happy holidays.
Thank you so much for joining us today on this episode of the Generate Your Value podcast. If you find our conversations to be useful in your life, I invite you to subscribe to our podcast so you don't miss an episode.
You can find me online at Instagram at _Zach.Levy, Facebook, and LinkedIn.
For information on my coaching services, visit my website at www.generateyourvalue.com. You can also find me and my company on LinkedIn, Facebook, X, and Instagram. Simply search for Generate Your Value on those platforms.
Once again, thanks for joining us for today's podcast, and we invite you to generate your value in this world.